You remember like the going beyond stuff, like exploring some of these tools a little bit more, pushing yourself a little bit more. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do the ball bounce. And what I want you to do is at least attempt both of them. You're only going to turn in one as the required assignment. So I technically won't know if you've attempted both of them, except if I ask you under a lie detector. Okay. So I'm going to create a sphere, okay? And when I create the sphere, there's a couple of things I like to do. Number one, I always like to make sure that the ball that I'm starting with is right on the ground line. It doesn't matter for anything else except for my own personal sanity. With this assignment, we're not starting off with anything except for a blank scene. So in this case, you have to actually build everything from the ground up, which is obviously a little bit different. There's no rig with this, obviously. It's just we're setting keyframes. Where this one's going to really get you is there's so many different things that we're going to be setting keyframes for that it can really get overwhelming. Okay, so what I like to do especially is kind of break it down into pieces. It makes it much simpler. If you try to go too crazy with this and set everything at once, you're just going to fall apart. So the first thing I animate is the translate Y. Now, because I moved it up 1 unit, I don't like to start off with that at 1. I like that to be my 0. So under modify, there's a thing called freeze transform. And what this does is it basically resets all of these without actually moving them back. If I do reset transform, that goes away. If I do freeze transform, it goes back to 0 and the ball is just sitting here, okay? So now I'm going to animate the ball, and I'm going to animate just the bouncing of it in the Y direction first, and then I'll start adding other stuff on top of it. So I'm going to set a keyframe on this. Now I could go here and say key selected, and that's what we've done before. We've also hit the S key, right? Remember we hit the S key on some things? So what I want to do is kind of combine those. I want to hit the S key, but only set keyframes for whatever I have selected. So under my animation menu here, I have a key and I have a set key button. And that's what happens when you hit S to set a key, it goes to this menu item and sets a key. If I go to the option box though, I can specify more options. And the one that I want to set is to do all keyable from channel box. Okay. Now, if you don't save your preferences every day, remember I showed backing up your preferences to your own folder and then copying them when you come back in? If you don't do that, then you have to just make sure you set this every time you come in. So all keyable from channel box, set key. So now what's going to happen is every time I hit S, whatever one of these letters or words is highlighted, it'll set a key for that one. And before I get too far, I need to make my project. So I'm going to go to my project window, hit new, go to 2540, and say that this is going to be my Sarcona bouncy ball. There we go. Okay. So I'm on frame 1. I went to translate Y. I set a key at 0. I'm going to go up to frame 20 and set another key at 0. I'm going to go to frame 40, set another key at 0. 60, set a key. 80, set a key. 100, set a key. 120, set a key. Okay. Now what I'm doing here is I'm setting keys every time the ball is on the ground. Now I could go up and I could say, okay, at frame 1, he's on the ground. Frame 10, he's in the sky. At frame 20, he's back on the ground. At frame 30, he's back in the sky. And I can constantly move the ball back and forth and constantly go through and set keys, but it's kind of like a waste to do that, okay? So now what I'm going to do is go between these. So I'm going to go to frame 10 and then scoot him up and then set a key. All right, so I've just set my first actual animation keyframe where he's going to start at frame 1, go to 10, and then come back down to 20. Okay, so now when I go to 30, I can just lift this back up again and then set a key. I can go to 50, lift this back up again, set a key. Go to 70, lift it back up, set a key. So I'm just going between each one of my original keyframes and setting a key. And this just makes the keyframe process a little bit easier. So now when we hit play, this is what we get. Gorgeous. All right, so tell me one thing right now that we could do to make this look a little bit more realistic. Slow in and slow out. Okay, so let's go to our graph editor. let's look at our translate Y. All right, it has slow in and slow out. So then the question is, should it have slow in and slow out? Right. When it's going up, from fast to slow. Okay. So the ball's speed is going to be the fastest right as it leaves the ground. Okay. So as it leaves the ground, it's going like 100 miles an hour. Boom. And as it works against gravity, then it's going to start to slow down. And then as it starts coming down, it's going to start picking up speed. So right before it hits the ground, it's going to be the fastest it's going to be again. Okay. So all the keyframes on the bottom here are going to be linear. So I'm going to grab all those keyframes and just click this button right there. See this one up here that says linear? Now what that's going to do is it takes all of those easy E's or slow in and slow outs and it makes them rigid. It makes it like a hard hit. So now when we hit the play button, now it's going to start to feel a little bit better. All right, something else that could help this animation. Stretching them, stretching and squashing. We're not there yet. We will get to those after. We're still focusing just on the Y. Yep, that's perfect. You're grading the bounce. So the first bounce is always going to be the highest bounce. Gradually, it's going to get less and less. Unless the ball has a mind of its own and can actually like make itself jump higher, or there's other forces at play, it typically wouldn't do that. So I'm going to shrink each one of these so that he goes shorter and shorter and shorter each time. All right, so that should be good there. How does it look? It's getting there. Right. What else is wrong with it though? Right? Right. It feels rigid. We're also getting the same distance, right? So each time it goes up and then it comes back down is still the same amount of time. It shouldn't be, right? Because at the start it's going to be 20 frames, and then it's going to be less frames and less frames and less frames each time. Right. What? And this too. Yeah, we'll tweak that also. Um, so all of these need to be tweaked over. So if I go to my dope sheet, I can just grab, not these ones, grab that, and just kind of scoot them over. So what I'm doing is just kind of scooting over each one. And it may help too to kind of see this in the graph editor while you're doing it. I could, but I want to scale them kind of independently because when I get to the end of this, I don't want them to be as evenly spaced. If I scale it, what's going to happen is they're all just going to evenly scale in or out. Okay. So here, there's going to be bigger gaps, medium-sized gaps, and then less and less. So what we're looking for here when we do this is I want basically the same size of hill that's here. That shape should follow down into all of these other shapes. Okay. And what I mean by that is if you look at the, let's just really exaggerate this. If we look at this here, how tall this is compared to narrow, and then I looked at the next one, how short and dumpy this one is, that doesn't make sense. Okay. So they have to be very similar in look. So like this one probably needs to be scooted over just another tick, and that should be good. Okay. So now let's look at this. Okay, maybe a little bit more on the end. I think it just needs a little bit more. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. Cool. And then I think maybe just another one. Sometimes you'll animate stuff and it's just like, I think it just needs an extra bounce. You can animate stuff out here, like right inside this area, it's adding keyframes. You can also do it right here. If you watch videos of people doing animations, there are some people who never worked in the viewport that's simply preview. Everything they do is animated inside the graph editor. So if I click on this one, which is the insert keys, and then all I have to do is just middle click, it'll add keyframes. And then I can very quickly just grab this and scoot it up. Okay, instead of dealing with, how high is this and all that. Scoot it where I need it. Perfect. Okay, so now I can play again. Oops. And I didn't make sure this was linear. Okay, it feels better. Now, one of those principles was exaggeration, right? So exaggeration means that instead of the ball just kind of like gradually going up and then slowing down and doing this, we really want to emphasize it. So I really want to force the ball to kind of shoot up in the air, hang out for a second, and then come back down. Okay? So I want to really exaggerate how fast it's going and how long it's kind of hanging right here at the top. So I'm going to grab all of my curves. And remember, we did this on the other assignment is we changed them to weighted tangents. And then we did the free tangent weight. Because what I need to do is I need to be able to go into each one of these curves here, and I need to be able to adjust their stuff. So I'm going to grab this one and maybe just pull it out. And the same thing here. Okay, I need to break all of these. So I click the break button. And what I'm trying to accomplish with this is I want these bars to be pretty close to vertical-ish, not right vertical because that'll be too quick. But I want them to be more vertical and this area up here to be more of a plateau, more of a flat spot. Now, once you get to the end of these, there's not that many frames. Like I could zoom in, right here and tweak the hell out of this curve, but there's only 1, 2, 3 frames before it hits the top. So sometimes you're not actually going to be able to see a huge difference for something like that. But we still go in there and we still tweak those so that it looks nice. Okay, so now each one of these hills has been tweaked. So now what we should get, a lot more speed at the beginning as it comes up, a lot more hang time, and then it comes down pretty quick, okay? So now let's see if we have that. Okay, so that definitely feels a lot better. It feels like the ball is actually hitting the ground now because it's hitting the ground, because it's hitting so fast it's coming right back up. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so that's what my Y curve looks like at the end. So I have these nice big hills like this inside here. Now, just my own personal preference, I like to actually just take all of my Ys and scoot them 1 frame over, okay? That way it takes a little bit longer to go up than go down. That's the only reason for that. Perfect. Okay, so now we have that. Now I want to do my movement, okay? So I want to move it from point A to point B. That's what he should be doing. So I'm going to go back to frame 1. I'm going to set him in his start point way back here. I'm going to go to my translate X and I'm going to hit S to set a key. Then I'm going to go to the end of my animation and just slide him over here and then hit S to set a key. So now what should happen is he should just bounce as he's moving. I don't need to set one of those, just start and the end. It's amazing, isn't it? Now he does look kind of weird because what's happening is right at the beginning where he's moving the most, as far as upwards, he's actually traveling the least amount of distance. Right in the middle, he travels really far. I'm going to go back to my graph editor, click on just Translate X, and just change this curve. It's not rolling yet. There we go. So you can see how the ball kind of like launches on that first hit. Boom. Okay. So all of these things have to be synced up. If I tried to do the Translate X and the Translate Y at the same time, I would have way too many keyframes to go through and try to tweak everything and modify it and get it to look right. That's why I like to do them one at a time. It's gorgeous. Okay. So now, what's the next step I should do? Oh my gosh. Someone say squash and stretch. Squash and stretch. There we go. Perfect. Okay, let's talk for a second about squash and stretch. So I just duplicated my ball off to the side so we can just look at it for a second. Um, this is not squashing. If I take the ball and do this, that's not squashing. All that did was scale the ball. What it gives us is the appearance that the ball has just been like squished downward, but we lose like the volume of it. Okay, so as the ball squishes down, it should also squish out, okay, or stretch out. So if I do this one and I squash it down this way, I'm going to grab the green box here and pull it out that way. So you'll see that this is what it should look like, nice and big. This is what you don't want it to look like. Okay, so let me undo that so we can see it the other way too. When it stretches, the same thing. It shouldn't go like this because what's happening is it's actually getting more volume here. It should go out like this and in like this. Okay, imagine that this is a water balloon. As I take a water balloon and stretch it out, if I pull it this way, the inside or the sides of it are going to go inward. Or a regular balloon does the same thing too. Okay, so that's what we have to keep in mind. One thing that happens that people forget about, let me duplicate him again, is they'll go through and they'll scale it this way and then they'll scale it that way. Okay, now it looks like it's good, but what happens is when I go to this view, when I go back to perspective, I actually have this like weird shape now. Yeah, it's like a weird sideways pancake. Okay. Now, one thing to consider before we even do the ball also wants to rotate. So if I were just to squash this or stretch it, so let's say I did this, and then I start rotating it, that's going to look weird when I rotate that. Okay. So I want to do all my rotation first, and then I'll do my squash. So the way it has to work for this specific one is I want to rotate him basically. He's on his feet now, let's say. He's going to land on his hands, and then he's going to land on his feet, then his hands, then his feet. So he's always going to flip over every time. So if I go to my rotate and figure out which direction this is rotate Z. I click on rotate Z, I set a key. I'm going to go up till he hits the ground right there, and then I'm going to rotate him 180 degrees, or negative 180 because he's going backwards. I'm going to go to the next time he hits the ground and go another 180 degrees. So that'll be negative 360. I'll go until he hits the ground again. And there's another 180 degrees. I'll go till he hits the ground again. And there's another 180 degrees. Okay. At this point, his bounces are so small, it's not going to matter. There's not going to be much squashing and stretching there. So I just give him a little bit of rotate right at the end. All right, so now if we look at this, okay, it's a bit more life to it. Cool. Okay. So now we can do our squashing and stretching. So I'm going to go to the start of this, and when I do my squash and stretch, I have to set keyframes for all my scales, not just one at a time. I do all three of them at the same time. So I hit S to set a key on all three of them. Hold on. It's weird. All right, or whatevs. Then I'm going to go up. Oops. Now, when he starts off here, I actually want him to be kind of squashed down at the start of this. So I'm going to squash him. There we go. And then just reset my keyframe. Perfect. And then if I were just to go through this, what's going to happen is he's going to be like this like weird floppy pancake thing. Okay. So he's going to be the most flat right when he hits the ground. And then he should be most football, which is stretched out the other way, right after he leaves the ground. Okay, so those are our extremes. So right as he's leaving the ground here, I'm going to squish him in, and I'm going to stretch him out. Okay, so we start here, and then we go like that. Now, right when he hits the top of his hill right here, he should basically level himself back out. So he's back to being round again. So he goes like this. He's round again. And then as he starts getting closer to the ground right here, that's when he's going to be squished in this way and stretched out that way. Yep, perfect. Then when he hits the ground, he'll be flat. So we stretch out this way. That is a perfect question. We definitely can. Okay. So a couple of things like the dope sheet is really good for that. If we expand the dope sheet, you'll see that there are rotate spots right here. And if you're able to isolate which keyframes are doing what, you definitely can do that. So I know that right here at the beginning, I really can't do that because I have more work I have to do first. Okay. I don't have a complete cycle right here. I will in a second though. So after he hits here, he's pancake. Right after this, he's going to go football. Squish it in, stretch it out, and set a key. Okay. So now here's my cycle. If you look at my rotates, or my scales, not rotate. If you look at my scales right here, you'll see that my scales are 2 right here, 1, and then these 3. So this right here is actually the loop, these keyframes. So if I grab those and I copy them, I scoot up to like there, I think, and I paste it. Yep, that worked. Okay. It looked like other stuff was going on, but it didn't. Yep. Okay. So now if we look at this, then we should see it goes like this. It don't work at all. Why didn't you work? Epic fail. All right, why didn't you work? Let's go to our graph editor and take a look and see. Oh, what's this? I know, I don't have the other half of it yet. So right there, you should be back to 1. It sure did. Let's grab this one. Make sure I grab the right ones. Yeah, that one there. This, and this. My Maya, play nice. No, it's not playing nice today. All right, well, here's another way that we can do this. And this is maybe, I don't know if it's easier way or what. So if we click back on here, if I left click inside my timeline, what happens is it automatically updates my stuff. Okay. If I middle click, it doesn't update my stuff. Okay. So if I go here to 10, and I know that the next time he's going to be in that same pose is at 25, I can just click on 10, middle click on 25, and then hit S to set my key. Okay. So that automatically will take that pose and put it there. I think I could even copy this from here. Let's try that. No, that'll copy the whole thing. Okay, so I can do the same thing. So I go here, I middle click, set a key, go up to the next one, middle click, set a key, go up to the next one, middle click, set a key. Oops. There we go. Okay, so same thing, I can go to this one, middle click on where it's supposed to be and set a key, middle click and set a key, middle click and set a key. There we go. And then back over here, this is just going to be back to being round. Okay. So eventually you'll get to the point where your ball doesn't need to stretch and squash as much as it was doing. Especially at the end, there's not a whole lot of movement, so there's not going to be a whole lot of squashing and stretching. Okay, that's cool. All right, so now that we have our basic stuff, why that keeps getting in there? This is what my scale looks like. This is my ball scaling in X, Y, and Z. Now it's very intimidating, but if you just look at it as a graphical image, it's not actually too bad. So the first thing I want to do is kind of line up all the stuff. If you look at this one, that's where the ball is perfectly round. Okay. If you look above that line, you'll see that it basically is appearing like there's more stuff above the line than below the line. So I just want to basically just move these so that they're all kind of in alignment first. That's like my first part of this. Okay. So that feels more synchronized. Okay. Then what I want to do is just like we did on the translate Y, is we gradually lessened and lessened and lessened that translate Y. I want to do the same thing for this. So here's a quick way to do that. If I grab all of these, somewhere up here, I think it's this guy. This is called a lattice. And what it allows So very similar to something where we would do a scaling, where we can just grab all the keyframes and scale them. This creates points. And what I can do is grab these endpoints and just pull it down. And grab these endpoints and pull them up. Okay, so it's a very quick way to just take everything and just gradually scale it back to being flat. The endpoints I need to make sure are at 1. So I go up here to where it says 0.995 and just type 1. And that just moves everything back so it starts at 1. And that's cool. So now if we look at this, now this is by no means perfect. If we look at some of these parts here, that looks really weird how this is just like coming right off of that. Okay. So what I would need to do is also go to my rotation for that. And maybe you just kick this rotation up a little bit more so it goes a little bit quicker right at the beginning. There it goes. So now it feels a little bit more like that rotation is a little bit faster right at the beginning where it should be. And I could probably hit each one of these and do a flat on this. Let's see if that works. Yeah, that works. Okay. So I grabbed all the middle ones here and I made them all flat, okay, which is this icon. And what that does is just ease in and ease out each one of those. So as the ball comes into that spot, it's basically just like slowing itself down in the rotation, and then it's going to pick up speed again. Okay, and some of these just kind of try it out. Like, what does it look like? Is it working or not working or whatever? Okay, actually that isn't working. Never mind. Ignore that. It was slowing down too much. Okay, cool. Make sound effects too when you're watching yours. It helps. All right. And I'm going to call this bouncy ball 1. Okay, so that's the first way that you can do a bouncing ball. Okay. Now the second way that we can do a bouncing ball involves a little bit of a rig. So I'm going to go to, instead of a polygon primitive, it works either way. The NURB sphere is just a nicer looking sphere when you do this. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to move it up. I'm going to freeze my transforms. And I'm going to create some stuff. So the first one that we did, the ball goes from head to feet each time it rolls over. This one will not do that, okay? This one is going to have a little bit more personality. The first one is more of like a ball you threw and it bounces and rolls and does whatever. This one is kind of a little bit more alive. It has its own abilities to bounce itself. So I'm going to go to the rigging tab, and under deform, there is a tab called nonlinear. Here's something cool you can do. Any one of these buttons, you see the little bar on top, you can let go, and now you have a menu. Set right there. Cool. So you'll see one of these is squash. Okay. And here's how squash works, is that when we click on squash, we get this little manipulator. So if I know that I want this thing to squash, I go over here to the squash, I go to where it says factor, and now I can squash or stretch this. So I don't have to worry about doing the scales, all 3 of the scales at once. I have one attribute now that I'm dealing with. Now, if this goes too crazy, I believe it's the Alt key, and I drag. Nope, it's not that. Control key and I drag, and it goes a lot slower. There we go. Okay, perfect. Now, I don't want it to stretch and squash from the center because as it hits the ground, it's going to stretch and squash away from the ground. So what I need to do is I need to move this handle to the ground. So I just set this back to 0. I need to scale it up so that it fits the entire shape of this, like so. And then I need to turn off the low bound. Darn you. Get back. Wait. All right. I'll leave the low bound on. It shouldn't be taking this away. This must be a 2016 thing that's moving that. The low bound doesn't really matter. It's not going to do anything now. But now it's only going to squash and stretch from that one spot. Okay. Now, the bigger we have this, the more subtle that squashing and stretching is going to be. Okay. If I have this super tiny like this, it's really going to affect only like a different kind of look to it. Okay. So I want to keep that obviously big enough. Cool. All right. So that's one of the things that we can add to this guy. The other one is a bend. So I click on the sphere, I click on bend, and then I can again reset this to 0. So he's on the ground. Scale this up so it's big. Okay. And I want to make sure it's big enough where I could actually grab it. If I scale this down too far, you'll see it's actually kind of hard to grab because it's on the same bar as that one. Now if I go to my bend and I go to this curvature, incredibly subtle, it's barely moving it. Let's type in like 20 or 30. Now what we're going to get is it's actually going to like bend the ball, okay? And like this, it looks kind of weird, but when you add in the squash, it'll actually like squash in that direction. And then you can go back to the bend, and then you can do the curvature. Okay? So now we can actually do a little bit more of a storyline here of, you know, the ball is jumping and pushing himself and going a little bit forward. Now, if I take these all back to 0, just because I like to reset everything before I start animating, and I take the ball and I move it, you'll see that these things don't go with it. They have to go with it in order for this whole thing to work. So what I do is I grab both of these sticks, I hold down Shift and click the ball, and then I hit P to parent it. Okay? So on your hotkey list, P to parent, that was one of the things. In Cinema, we would just drag stuff basically into groups or connect them together. So now when I click the sphere and move it, that'll move with it. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the ball kind of roll into the scene, and then I'm going to have it squash down and then stretch up, okay, and then bounce. So let's rewind our playback. Hey, get out of there. Let me take this ball, throw them on a layer, and hide it. Gone. So this one I'm going to do a little bit different than I did the other one. So I'm going to set a keyframe on rotate Z. I'm going to go up to 60 frames. I also want to set a keyframe, sorry, on transit X. There we go. Then I'm going to go up to 60 and wheel him over here and then just rotate him a little bit. Now, in order for this to work out correctly, he's got to land like that. Okay? If I rotate him like this, he's going to start squashing and stretching upward. That doesn't work. He has to stretch so that he's facing down. Okay? So I can grab both of these and hit S to set a key, preview my animation. Okay? And then once he gets here, then he's going to do a little squashing and stretching. So I'm going to say, you'll see all the items are here, bend and squash. They're right inside the channel box. So I'm going to go to 60. I'll go to my squash. I'll set a keyframe on factor. I'll go up a couple frames. I'll factor it down. What are you doing? Why aren't you squashing and stretching? You're working. Now he's working. Okay, so he's just being stupid. Perfect. So we'll set a key for that on there. Okay, so now he rolls in. Woo. and then he squashes down, and now he's going to jump up. So this is where I'm setting more keyframes at a time. So I'm going to grab the ball again. I'm going to grab the translate Y, the translate X, a little bit of rotate Z, and set a keyframe. So he rolls in, he squashes down, and then he's going to come up. So he's going to go like that. Okay. Now that looks horrible, but wait till I put the squash back on. Again, what are you doing that? He wants me to click on this. That's what he wants. Such a baby. There we go. And then I'm also going to do a little bit of the bend on here too. So let me just set my keyframe for the squash. Go back to here. Set my start keyframe for the curvature. Oh, fine. I'll grab you and then I'll do it there. Yeah. Well, I think what's happening is it's the translate Y and stuff just not in sync with the rest of it. Let me go to my graph editor, grab him, and just do that. Oops. There we go. So now he feels like he's jumping up. Woo! And then he's going to land on the ground. So then we go here. And this is why, it can be troublesome to set a bunch of keyframes at once because there's so much stuff going on. Rotate him back like this. Translate X is going to be a little bit forward. And sometimes it'll do that. Yep. We've already done pose to pose, but this is essentially it. All right. And then that should be good. All right, so now when he lands, I'm going to have a little bit more movement here. If I can go into my squash, obviously, and squash him down. And my bend is also going to be animated. I'll go up a couple frames. I'll take my bend. It really wants me to select them. I think that's just a display thing. Let me change my, sometimes you change this renderer to legacy and things just work better. Maybe not. Oh, that looks ugly. Oh my God. I don't like it either. But look, it's working. Maybe it's working. We'll click on this guy and see. Bend. Yeah, see, he's working. See, it's just that stupid viewport. All right, so we'll do that. I'll go to my squash. Squash him down a little bit. There we go. So now he lands. And then I can have him squash up a little bit more. Bend back a little bit more. Okay. And then I can do more stuff here. I could have him kind of wiggle, have this bend kind of go like this back and forth a little bit. Okay. So different kind of animation. Definitely doable. You do get a different level of control, different ability to animate him a little bit different. I would say definitely start off with the other one, get comfortable with that, doing it one at a time. And if you want to attempt something like this, definitely attempt it. You could even just attempt just creating the ball and just doing some of these controls on it. This is kind of the startup of doing rigging stuff. Okay. Basically, we build controls, and then we build controls over here so that we can animate all the stuff without having to click on this and grab it, and then click on this and grab it, then click on that and then grab it. Everything is just right here where we need it. Save. There we go. Okay. So for the assignment, what you're going to do is you're going to animate a ball. He's going to roll for 2 seconds, and then he's going to bounce at least 3 big bounces. Okay. So he's going to roll for 2 seconds, 3 big bounces and a couple of trailing ones. It's not just like boing, 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 and all of a sudden he stops. That looks weird. If you don't believe me that it looks weird, let me just throw this onto a layer and bring this one back. 1, 2, 3, right there. Ah. Settle down, and then you're going to roll for another 2 seconds. Okay, and how long is 2 seconds? 60 frames, perfect. Okay, so you can do it with either method if you want to do. If you want to turn in this one, if you want to turn in the other one, if you want to turn in both. If you want to go beyond and do that, that's perfectly cool. And then also you can make little obstacle course for your little dude. So instead of just having him bounce, with my plane, I'm done with my stupid renderer, so I can go back to the cool one. Awesome. All right, so I have a ground plane so he can do that. Oh, pay attention to this too. When you do the squash, look at something you guys didn't catch. He's no longer hitting the ground. It's kind of floating, right? So I have to go back to my graph editor and go to my translate Y and just adjust each one of these points with my move tool. And it's better to have them kind of sticking in the ground than definitely not hovering above it. All right, I think over here we should be pretty good. Yep, it's good there. Okay, cool. All right, so there he is. He rolls for 2 seconds and then comes to rest. Awesome. So for obstacles, you can play with some of these shapes. Like in the past, I've done this one, which is kind of a silly one, but whatever. I'm a silly guy. Perfect. I'm gonna make a torus. I'm gonna hit the number 3 on here just to make it nice and smooth. Will he make it over? Oh, he does. Congratulations. There's another one. Will he make it over this one? If you line it up right, he will. Oh, so close. And then, of course, I can give this a little bit of modeling on here. Come on, baby. Fire? All right, you asked for it. Let's put some fire on it. Effects. Fire. One object at a time. Fire. There we go. FX. Fire. Then rewind. And then we hit render. Oh my gosh, that poor ball. And then the ball is on fire too. Everything's on fire in the fire scene. Ground is on fire. Oh my god. I mean, give me talk about fire. That's what happens, right? Yeah. Graphics card explodes. My computer starts on fire. We get a day off school though, wouldn't we? Cool. No more fire. Whew, that was a close one. Here's another thing. Did I show cloth in this class? No. You guys missed out. You know what? I think this will be even awesomer. So we'll just do this. I'll show both. You can do hair, which is cool. So if I just go to create hair and I do like a good amount, like there you go. Not 15 and 15 is probably good. Passive fill, we'll just do 10 on that one. Randomization, hairs per clump, perfect. Length, I don't know, like 5 is good, I guess. And create. Oh, so now when we hit play, watch this. there's a bunch of hair hanging. Now, if I delay the ball for a few frames by going to my dope sheet and just scooting this down to about like 60 or so, there we go. Then I can add my rotation. So I can just rotate this back like right here, set these back to 1, set that back to 0, and then come back here and then just roll them into position. There we go. Now what that gives me is just a little bit of time for this hair to calm down. So now I can grab the ball. I can go to N hair. Nope, I can go to N cloth and say create a passive collider. So now he shall collide with the hair. Hey, what are you doing back here? Get back over there. Align this. What are you doing? Oh, yep, I did. There we go. So now the hair calms down and oh, you missed it. Let's go to N hair. Let's go to the scale hair tool and we'll click and drag. Now we have hair. Now we rewind again and we play. Oh, and it flops it. Awesome. The first round was hair. The second round will be cloth. So we will grab a plane. Perfect. I think these are gaudy, okay? They're not something you want to actually just like throw on. That's absolutely perfect. I need a lot more divisions because this is going to be a kick ass. Cool. I'm going to make this a cloth. Boom. If I hit play, the cloth will fall to the ground. We don't want the cloth to fall to the ground, so I'm going to grab all of these vertices atop, and I will go to End Constraint and say Transform. Perfect. Now, my computer will run really slow, but goes through, boom. And then I can obviously make this a collision object also. I also should make sure I'm playing back, yep, max roll. Okay. And then also, so the hair doesn't just start where it was, I have to grab this and I go to solvers, initial state set for selected. Is that right? Maybe. We'll find out. Nope, that's not it. End hair, set start position. There it is, from current. So now when I rewind, he starts from there. Amazing. Amazing. Let's make it even more amazing. If I grab vertices in here, perfect. Just leave that. We'll go to end constraint and we'll make it a terrible surface. It's a terrible surface. You'll see. Whoops. I'm just going to hide my terrible surface so I can actually see what the end cloth is doing. Oh, it's going to do it. Oh, no, it ripped. It ripped way too soon. Let's go to the outliner. Let's find our dynamic constraint. And we just need to have a little bit more glue on there. The glue wasn't holding up. TEAR, correct. All right, now, here it comes. Come on. Oh, it did it. It broke through the fourth wall. See it right there. Okay, awesome, fun stuff. I mean, I'll find like a 0.2 or something better, whatever. Okay, so find something that obviously makes your scene a little more interesting instead of just the ball bouncing. When you render your stuff out, in order for the ball to look like he's rolling, he needs a material on him. This ball, if I don't select him, you can't see that he's rolling. But once I put a material on him, where's RenderMan? Where are you at? RenderMan, load my plugin. He's thinking. And just so you know, RenderMan may not even render the hair. I'm not even sure if it will. There we go. So something simple to see. So a ceramic is perfect. And then I can go into my materials, material attributes. There we go. And then just give the color an actual like map to it. So you can apply a ramp to the color. You can apply a file to the color. Just something so that we can see it. Don't touch any of the 3D textures, just the 2D stuff. Ramp. And if I take the ramp like so, I'll get this nice line going down the middle so that now I can perfectly see this thing is rolling. And just for fun, will RenderMan render hair? Every rendering engine is different, so RenderMan may not render hair. Mental Ray does render hair. Some of them just are very specific. It does. Hooray. Hurrah. Sweet. No, but there's another one that we could use called XGen, called XGen, and this is another way we could do hair too, and another way to do grass and other things like that. Cool. Yeah, lots of cool things, lots of fun stuff that we could play with, especially once we get the basics in there. Don't let any of this fancy stuff obscure your animation. The point of the assignment is the animation. Adding bells and whistles and fireworks and whatever else doesn't compensate for a crappy animation. Okay, you have to have a good animation first, and then you could add fancy stuff to it like hair and end cloth. You could even add hair to the end cloth. Figured out a good way to do that. Don't do that. All right, cool. Any questions?